Welcome to the third episode of Women's Trailblazers. And I have with me two young entrepreneurs, Vrushali Prasade from Pixis and Aditi Sinha from Locale. And both of these have embraced entrepreneurship at a very young age. And so it will be, I'm looking forward to an exciting conversation with both of them. So welcome, Vrushali, welcome Aditi
Thank you.
for joining
Thank you for
us.
having me.
It's our privilege to be investors in both your companies, and maybe we will learn more in terms of during this conversation. So Vrushali, to start with, you had an interesting experience of, let's say, missing even your 10th exams and things like that, right? So, and then similarly doing your startup when in college, and then almost like a dropping out, right? Where you got in and then did things. So this actually calls for a lot of, let us say, taking a stand, even with family, right? And so how has been your experience, and how, looking back, would you have done anything differently?
No, definitely not. I wouldn't have done anything differently. And like you said, it takes a lot of it. Most of my journey has been about taking a stand for what I feel needs to be done. And for me, that comes from the experiences that I have seen for my mother and my grandmothers. Like in the generations before us, I have seen time and again that the women in the family have sacrificed in one way or the other to align with the societal expectations, to align with the familial expectations. And that is where my mother sort of stood strong for me in almost every walk of my life, in order to make sure that if she believes that something that I'm doing is valuable enough, then I should go ahead and do it, even if it has any sort of implications in any other walks of life. So in school as well. So my father has been the general sort of Indian middle class parent who believes in academics, who believes in doing engineering, getting a safe job, stable job, settling down in a family environment. But in my school life, I was doing good in academics as well as in sports. So I have been playing table tennis since I was 10 years old. And as I aged, I was getting better in the game. So in my 9th standard, I got selected in the India team to represent India in international under-17 junior girls tournaments. And in Maharashtra board, 10th standard is sort of rite of passage, where on the basis of your board exam number, you get admission into the junior colleges. So my father was very much insistent on the fact that I should go into the coaching classes like Nayak and Mahesh at that time, which had these 8-hour, 9-hour long tuitions right from June, right from the day your 10th classes started. And that was not how I learned, even in general. It was more about active learning in school. So firstly, I did not believe in that sort of learning, but I went ahead anyways. But then when I got the opportunity to go out for India camps and to represent our country at various tournaments, I definitely wanted to take it. And I knew that my father would not agree to it. So my mother sort of took a stand for me over there. She just gave me the passport. I left for Delhi and US. And then after that, we told my dad that I'm here now. So obviously, when I came back home, there were repercussions, but all is well that ends well. So like in 10th standard, I was able to get 99% with the sports quota. So sort of I topped my school. I got into the college of my choice. And now my father sort of gloats about the fact that I played internationals in my 10th standard. So basically, as long as sort of you feel that you'll be able to see it through, it makes sense to take bets on yourself. Only that is how you grow in life. So
Yeah. So today you and your father have a hearty laugh about that episode.
Yeah, definitely. I make sure that I taunt him here and there whenever he asks me to do something that I don't agree.
Yeah. No, no, that's a good, healthy fun to have. And I'm sure he will be very proud of what you have achieved. Right. Yeah. Now, Aditi, how did you come into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think my story is, when I'll narrate you my story, TCM, you'll realize that, it was something that happened very randomly in my life because growing up, I never ever thought or imagined myself to be an entrepreneur. But I think I really related with what Vrushali also mentioned about sort of, standing up for yourself, right? And I think as women, we see that right from our childhood when we see our mothers, our grandmothers, and all the females around us have sacrificed so much, right? There could be two sort of lessons or takeaway for you as a female, right? One could be, hey, this is how it is supposed to be, and this is how you have to sort of also follow the same footsteps that they've set for you. But I think for me, and I don't know how, but unconsciously, I just like promised myself that this is not what I see for myself. I really want to sort of lead an independent life and build something of my own that I'm proud of. And I think that also naturally came because similar to Vrushali, I was also very good in acads when I was a kid. And I think as a middle class family, if you're good in acads, you naturally sort of drift towards going to engineering, preparing for JEE, and all of that, right? So I think I was I got caught up in that rat race and somehow sort of spent my 11th and 12th grade grueling very, very hard, hated those years completely. If I don't even want to sort of now recall them, right? But somehow I think, all's well that ends well. So ended up in BITS Pilani. And like when I went there, I basically took up economics, and in BITS you can sort of also take an engineering degree along with that, right? I was like, hey, I don't know, I'm just going to give myself a year and figure out what engineering degree I want to take, because I just didn't want to take anything for the sake of it. Because when I was in 11th and 12th grade, I realized that I'm not the kind of person who can just study for the sake of it. I really need to love and enjoy whatever I'm doing, right? So that much awareness I got about myself, and I gave myself that 1 year, but unfortunately could not develop any affinity towards any engineering course, right? And I was like, let it be. I'm going to roll with eco. I'm going to go deep into finance. And, like, again, that's where I guess my parents, sort of argument started happening at home. Hey, just take it, it's going to help you in placement, it's going to help you with a job. And I think and that's where, just like Vrushali also mentioned, right, like you have to go and follow your internal conviction. I was very, very convinced that if I take this and I'm going to become good at this, it's not like I will be unemployed, right? If I can, whatever you take, right, if you just make sure that you're really, really good at what you do, that's never going to be the problem. So yeah, and that was one of the best decisions that I've taken in my life, because just having eco made sure that I had enough time, and I dabbled through so many different things. I went, second year was devoted completely into research. Third year was completely about development sector consulting. So I tried a lot of different things, and somehow ended up in this startup called Social Corps, which is now called Atlan. Over there, I was basically working as a research analyst, and we used to work with a lot of governments, NGOs, consultative bodies, logistics companies, FMCGs, on a lot of data projects. And that was my first job. I basically joined there as an intern, so for the last 6 years of my college, and then converted to a full-time member. But it was over there that my eyes opened. I saw what it takes into actually building a company, into getting clients, making sure you deliver on them, and just loved every bit of it, right? And I met my co-founder now, Rishabh. We were friends first. We were working on a lot of projects together. So he was the tech guy. I used to be the business person, content, all of that. And we used to have like a lot of late night conversations on why is that the state of the tooling for all these business operations teams is so not elegant, right? Not state of the art, just like if you look at any other teams in the company. And that's where, we both decided, it was just 6 months into the job, but we decided to quit, move from Delhi to Bangalore, packed our bags, didn't know anyone in the city, but just gave ourselves 6 months of time, 6 months of runway to figure this out. We thought, hey, if this does not happen, it's okay, we can go back and get jobs. But somehow those 6 months just sort of kept continuing on and on.
No, that's amazing. And I think common theme from both of you is that, follow your heart, right? And so long as you enjoy what you are doing, and, today the opportunities in my generation, if you don't become a doctor, you become an engineer, or, maybe as a last chance, a chartered accountant like I did, beyond that, actually, just go find a job, right? Get any degree, find a job was the thing. Today, opportunities in a growing India are so big, right? Today, if somebody can say, I want to be a journalist, and then create a career out of that. And now people say that I'm only a TV journalist or a, video journalist, and still can build. And there are, in the creator economy, there is so much more is also possible. So I think follow the heart is the common theme that comes from both of you, right? And then take it from there, right? And you need to love what you do and to excel in it. Right?
Yeah, just to add one caveat over there, DCM, I won't say, follow your heart it's definitely the right advice, but I would say, it's not easy, right? Because when you're following your heart, you have to basically rebel through most people around you, right? So which is why you need to have that conviction and listen to your, what your inner voice or your intuition or whatever you call it is telling you, right? So I think follow your heart and have crazy conviction in yourself I'll just add that. Sorry.
Yeah. And conviction with the selling ability. You have to convince the people around you, right?
Yeah.
I think there is one is to rebel straight away, and the other is to convince them, right? And take them along, right?
Yeah.
I think, and both are very important. And those are very important even for entrepreneurship, right? While you have a point of view, many times you start with a hypothesis, right? And from there you go towards this thing, and you have to first convince a co-founder to be with you, and then maybe an angel investor, maybe first few employees, okay, to buy into the concept, buy into the idea. I'm sure you must have all gone through this, right? In the journey. And, I think one of the things, and obviously, what has been your experience being a woman co-founder? When you are out, woman entrepreneur, to go out to the market, whether to fundraise or to, go sell to a customer. Have you seen it any different compared to the way it is for, your male counterparts? Have you felt it, and how have you handled it?
Honestly, I have been quite lucky on that regard, because at least when we were right out of college, we were connected to most of the Bitsian network for our early angel investment discussions. And then through them, we were connected further to other investors. But because the quality of the early investors that we were talking to was quite rich, I personally did not face any discrimination because of being a girl. The primary way anybody looked at us was right out of college, enthusiastic kids. So all three of us were put into that bracket itself. And even at work, because I was one of, I was basically a woman founder at work, I always tried to make sure that inside our work environment, we treat men and women equally. So when hiring, we do not try to create a focus in this team, we need to have 20% women or 50% women. We do not keep that focus to just give opportunities to women, because we feel that keeping everybody at an equal evaluation criteria, obviously men and women will fare equally in most scenarios. And that is why most of our teams have almost an equal percentage ratio, some here, some there. Plus, in terms of our customer discussions or early customer discussions as well. At least I personally have been quite lucky where I have not faced any discrimination. Another reason for that could be that I look after the tech in our company and I don't do a lot of sales or early discussions, lead generation discussions. Maybe that is the reason why I am taken seriously, because I come at a much later point in time when I have discussions with our customers, when they've already validated the product, when they already believe in the product in most cases. So yeah, I mean, at least I have not faced a lot of discrimination because of being a woman on work front. Otherwise, on personal front, definitely. Get married, have kids, settle down. All of those factors are more prevalent on a personal and family front. But luckily on work front, it has been quite healthy so far.
How about you, Aditi?
I think my experience has been similar, just that, because I am the sort of public facing person in the company, I think there were instances where both on the fundraising side and on the client side, people definitely made some comments. A little less on the fundraising side, actually, but more in the client side, specifically, when you go and sell to customers that are, a little bit older, maybe come from like a very ancient school of thought. I usually, like, there were places where I felt like, like if Rishabh and I were there at the table together, people were looking at him more than me for validation, and people would look up to his thoughts and his opinions and his views. This definitely has happened before. But I feel, if I had to, sort of describe my experience, I think it was more to do with the age, and also because, when I started, I also used to look very, very young. So so, it was something that I had to do where, I started putting in a lot of effort to sort of, look a certain way, so that people took me more seriously. So I think from my experience, I faced more discrimination because of the younger age, I would say, TCM, rather than being a girl more. But yeah, on the personal side, yeah, it's exactly what Vrushali mentioned. I think it's common shared pain that all of us in our 20s go through together, and something that you bond with and relate with each other as well.
I know. And as a parent, I know this when I have to sit and negotiate with my daughter. So, I can understand it. But interesting. See, both of you also went through some sort of a pivot, right? In terms of starting at one point of journey and then discovering things and then, pivoting to where things came. And how was that journey? Why don't you explain a little bit about it and what you went through in terms of, was it easy to go through a pivot, or was it seen any different by yourself internally to be able to embrace it or not?
From my experience, it was like all of the pivots were very taxing on the entire team. Like, honestly, for us, the reason for pivot was when we started up, we were very naive, to put it very bluntly. We were just out of college. We were sort of young kids who were very much focused on building the coolest technology that is possible. And we did not focus a lot on product market fit. We did not focus a lot on business viability of what we are building. Our early beliefs were, if you build something that is really cutting edge, you will find some or the other buyer for it. And we learned it the hard way that you need to start with a problem and then work on a cutting edge solution for that problem. So that mindset shift took a lot of it took a lot of sort of struggles, after which we started to actually first focus on problem statements. So we started in the VR space. We worked on a few VR and AR applications with a couple of our customers. And at that time, we sort of realized that the overall global market itself was very much in its infancy when it comes to virtual reality as a technology. Like, it has been 8 years and still VR as a technology has not been adopted so well. So at that time, we took a tough call that if we actually have to bring up education about VR first in the market to educate people that there is this technology and then go ahead and sell your product, then it would involve a lot of marketing muscle, a lot of money power in order to just do that education and then sell your product. So that is when we moved into another domain in which we had a couple of promising customers in the gaming industry, and a similar learning on that front as well, that there were the segmentation in the gaming industry was very steep, where the larger customers had everything in-house. The smaller gaming studios did not have enough money to pay another third-party software. They were using sort of free versions of Unity as well. So there was a very thin area in terms of gaming companies that we could actually target. So during those 3 years of pivoting, it was very much a struggle. There were times when there were a couple of months where we sort of were self-funding because we had invested most of our raised funds into the product development technology for the products that we were building. So almost for 5 to 6 months, we were completely bootstrapped in that manner because we started freshly into the new domain. And from there, sort of learnings wise, we have made sure that in general, any product, any solution that we build, we make sure that we do it frugally, because we should always have a decent sort of runway with the company. And definitely the pivots were very challenging. But one thing that we were lucky to have was good customers. So during those 2-3 years, we learned to listen to the customer first, and first understand their problems, understand their overall org structure level problems, their day-to-day operations, understanding what is comfortable for them, what is where they are actually struggling at the moment. And the idea for Pixis was 100% originated because of the customer discussions that we were having. So one of our customers, HDFC Bank at the time, they gave us, because we were in the content generation space by the end of our previous product plans, HDFC sort of came to us and told that we are facing this specific problem in the ad marketing space, where we have a lot of marketing budget, but we believe that we are running a plain vanilla creatives across all of our customers. And because we were doing something similar in the 3D and gaming space, it was easier for us to build a POC for it. And that is how the idea of Pixis sort of originated, with personalized ad creatives. And then over time, we layered various solutions around it. But yeah, I mean, to put it simply, pivots were very difficult when they were for us.
And I think you also went through a little bit of a pivot, right? From initial starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for our the thing that was different in our case was because when we pivoted, we already had about 10 or so odd enterprise customers, revenue coming in, and even you guys as our investor. So we had like a team of like 20 plus people, about 23, 24 people. So sort of pivoting through all of that in the middle of all of that was definitely, it's never an easy thing to do. But for us, I think again, the story is very similar to Vrushali. It was not that, we woke up one day and we were like, hey, let's pivot. Because it basically came like a series of gradual steps that we kept taking on, listening to the market, listening to the customer, making changes in the product, and just, building another product from scratch instead of adding more features onto the previous product made much more sense, right? So in our case, as I told you, right, we had a product which was a visualization and analytics product for operations teams that are responsible for ground operations, right? So in mobility, delivery, logistics, and all of that. And with our previous product, they can basically slice and dice data, get answers to, what's happening with their operations in terms of supply, demand, delivery cost, and all of that. And when, users started using the product, they asked us, hey, instead of me having to go and look at sort of data and patterns, can you just tell me on my WhatsApp, what is the biggest thing I need to sort of solve at the moment? Because, they were always firefighting, things were always breaking. They were looking for a very easy solution. So we actually built alerts in our previous product. Once we built that and we shipped that, they asked, hey, I want to now track what's happening on those alerts, whether people were solving it or not, right? So it just kept coming from the market. And then we realized that, hey, let's just build a new product which has an alerting and an incident management module instead of like this previous product that was much more enterprise heavy. We were like, let's build it in a very self-serve, bottoms-up way, right? And that's how it happened. But I think, Chiratae also has been amazing because, Venkatesh, who is basically the partner that we work with from Chiratae, he has been really, really supportive through the decision that we took. We kept sort of, we used to have very regular catch-ups, and we used to tell him, this is what's happening, this is what we shipped, this is the feedback that we got. And, when we told him that we want to build a product from scratch, he was completely on board from day zero. So doing all of that along with the team, with the team as well, we had to go to in front of the team and take their buy-in that this is what we want to do, write the pros and cons of building a new product versus rebuilding it in the previous product. So we did all of that, took the entire team's buy-in, rallied them into one common vision, and then it happened. So definitely a crazy journey it's been, and lots to learn from the.
So interesting. So pivots, and one of the common theme again is listen to customer feedback. And then, when you solve for customer feedback, then whatever comes out, turns out it may be a pivot, but then it turns out successful. And we have seen in our portfolio as well, and even outside, companies which have been extremely successful have gone through pivots. And main feedback loop for that used to be customers. And they did it when they had money. They hit it when they were successful in a particular area, but still they did it because they redefined what the customer's requirement would be, right? And that redefined the market. So I think that's a big takeaway. And, I'm sure this will help people who are listening to think about pivot, not in a very negative way, right? And it's very important. And, I think both of you have seen a few years of entrepreneurship, and it doesn't come always as a bed of roses, right? And there will be highs and lows, right? And so if you were to, share one instance where you would like to share, which was like a big challenge, big thing that you needed to handle, and you felt very down. And then how did you go about addressing it and then, came out of it?
I think in our case, it was in various parts, as in initially during the pivots, because we built a team, which firstly, we were a very small team. Up until for the first 3 years, we were a very small, maximum 10-member team working on various solutions that we were building. So through each and every product shift that we did, we used to start from zero, learn about the industry, learn about the new technology that we are going to be working in. Like first we were working in OpenCV image manipulation domain. We moved into gaming industry, and then we learned from scratch about 3D domain, 3D model building, 3D dynamics, gaming engines. Then again, we did a shift and we learned from scratch about marketing industry, ad industry. And in those times, it used to be like 24-hour, 48-hour marathons. All of us, 5 to 7 people, we used to just sit in the office. We used to run the ad managers ourselves, publish each and every campaign with our hand, go through each and every field ourselves. So that journey, and we continue that even today. For example, whenever any new a new technology is released, for example, we try to make sure that we are up to date with it. For example, now generative AI is coming out, ChatGPT, OpenAI, various technologies are coming out which are relevant to our space. So even today, we continue to have those marathons because it is a lot more effective than just spreading it over maybe a week's time or 2 weeks' time to give equal amount of time, but that is sort of an intense absorption session for us. So I think that, and one other thing that was very sort of enlightening for us and me personally was when we started to scale our customers. Like, because for a long time, we were in a very small setup. We were just 5 or 10 people. Everybody was doing everything. Everybody was a very key stakeholder in something that is happening. So if any person in the team is not present, then that thing is like, then there are high chances that that specific activity that was supposed to be done would have been hampered a lot. And when we started scaling, when we started to have larger quantum of customers with us, we sort of realized that it is important to make sure that everyone, as much as possible, a person in the team is redundant to a certain extent. So that you have a team which can function on its own. And it is not that you are becoming, you are reducing your value in the company, me or our performance head, our product head. It is not that, but it is that you are empowering a team of future leaders or current leaders. So that mindset shift took a bit of a convincing for each one of us to do, that we need to give up responsibility to someone else. We need to let other people start taking decisions wherever we believe that they can. And we did that for the last year and a half. And now we are sort of actually able to scale the team to an extent where every department has their own decision makers. We are building the next line of leadership in those respective departments in-house itself by building that sense of ownership internally. But when we started with that, when we moved from a 10-member team to a 50-member team, that initial shift was, it was always sort of, you were trying to decide, should I be taking ownership and leading from the front, or am I just giving up on what I am supposed to do? Am I just giving up on my roles and responsibilities and pushing it over to the other person? So initially it was sort of a moral struggle of what is right, because we were learning everything ourselves firsthand. We did not have that experience of coming from a work environment. But yeah, now it is a lot more stable in that manner, where everybody has their own ownership KRAs, everybody knows what they are supposed to do. So it is a lot more decentralized and stable that way.
So building enterprise grade reliability. Yeah.
Cool. I'll go next. So I think I'll maybe talk about two different episodes from my journey. The first one was very, very early on. So as I previously mentioned that, you know, when we started Locale, we had like, we gave ourselves like 6 months of runway. That let's try to figure out something in these 6 months, because we did not want to financially depend on our parents or someone else to sort of sustain us, right? So we spent the first 6 months sort of, you know, like talking to customers, building prototypes, building POCs. And, you know, and at that time, you know, we didn't have all of this information or knowledge that, you know, when you go out fundraising, you have to keep like a buffer of months, because that takes that takes its own sweet time in terms of like doing DD and all of that. So I still remember, I think at the end of our 5th month, you know, we went out, we started talking to investors. And we initially, and that was a very wrong strategy looking back, but we started talking to like institutional investors, right? When we literally did not have, you know, any, like not even a working product. It was just prototypes, POCs, and a good story, I would like to believe. And then we realized that, hey, you know, this is not the kind of investors you speak to at this stage. You have to go and find something that you call angel investors. And so we were that naive, you know, like didn't even know who to call, who to talk to. But slowly, you know, you keep making mistakes and you figure out. But I think the lowest point in that process was when, you know, we really had no clue on how we're going to sort of pay our rent and sustain ourselves for the next set of months. So we were running on a very, very tight budget, even like very strict budget when it came to food. And you know, I basically had promised myself that I'm not gonna, you know, ask my parents to help sustain me. But it became really, really challenging up to a point. And you know, there's still one person. He was one of our very early mentors, investors, who really helped us out financially at that moment. And I didn't know what would have happened if he did not. So that was, I would say, you know, financially it was very, because, you know, when it comes to that, then sort of it really impacts sort of your efficiency, your quality of work and everything else, right? Because it's always there in your mind. You have to look at every bill, every invoice, everything that you have to pay. But I think that experience also taught me. And sometimes when I look back at my life now, I feel so grateful. I feel that, you know, at one point, this could have been completely unaffordable. So that's a different experience. And I think the second challenge that I would maybe want to talk about is when we were pivoting itself. So we had, sort of started sort of, earning revenue, and we had like these big logos. So we were working with Coca-Cola in Japan, working with Kareem in the Middle East. And, when we decided to pivot, we didn't know what to do with these customers. And Rishabh and I were very clear that we did not want to run two product lines because a very small team, and we thought that would dilute our focus. So, when we told these customers about the pivot, because they were enterprise, and they had very different needs and requirements with respect to what we were building at that moment, right? Some of them already had alerts built and all of that. So, after a long sort of debate, discussion, chat, we just decided that, hey, we'll just have to, there's no other option other than letting those customers go. And letting go of revenue and money and logos is just so painful. It's so hard. Again, I think in that process, while we were doing that, customers were telling us, you tell us how much it costs to run your AWS, we will pay for that. Like they were doing, so much on their power to not let us sort of shut down the product, sunset the product, right? But we just knew that, we cannot do two products at a time. We just took this hard call. Again, it was one of those cases where you have to just go behind your conviction and what you think is right. And I guess we did that, but that was also like a very painful moment emotionally.
Yeah. And, I think it's always tough to let go customers, right? Or bring about a significant change. Now coming to, I'm sure there are a lot of, young founders and potentially people who are in college who look up to you as role models, right? So if you were to, let's say, give something to them in terms of what would you advise them in terms of how they should go about either entrepreneurship or their career, in terms of what they can do better, right? Out of your experience.
I think I would say one, be as scrappy as possible if you are thinking of going in the entrepreneurship route. Like one, always try to figure out who you are building something for, or whose problem are you trying to solve. And when you identify that person, do not try to build the best product in the world right in the beginning. You need to start small, you need to start slow. So you can build a scrappy product and validate it as frequently as possible, so that you know that you are in the right direction, instead of focusing on scalability, infrastructure, instead of focusing on building the best product in the world to begin with. That helps in basically growing in the right direction, slow but in the right direction, instead of taking a huge leap and then knowing that it was in a direction that did not make much sense. So I think being scrappy and trying to just figure out ways to build quick POCs and validate in the early phase is very important. And secondly, I think the way it sort of is resounding from both of our stories, just believe in what you're trying to do. Like if you feel that there is a good opportunity that you should be taking, make sure that you jump towards it and do your best to seize it as much as possible. It may work out, it may not work out, but at least when you know you've tried, then you can sort of close that door and then open another door and explore that one.
Yeah, from my side, I think what I would say, and I think Vrushali already gave like very good tactical advice. Maybe I would give a little bit more of high level. What I mean by that is because I talk to like, a lot of female juniors of mine from college. I just feel like, and maybe I also went through that, but there's a lot of lack of confidence and self-doubt. And I think we as women, we struggle through that much more as compared to our male counterparts, something I've just seen while interacting with other women out there. So I think while it's important to acknowledge that, hey, this might be true, I think we should make sure that it doesn't limit us in terms of again, going through and following what you want to do, right? So, and I think one thing that is amazingly that has happened recently in the ecosystem is you see like so many other women founders now, right? So you see there's a representation of us now, and it's only increasing. So I think that should also give people the confidence. Both of us, I think we started very, very young, almost right out of college. So I think it just shows that, it is possible to do. So I think the only thing that I would say is, if just like Vrushali said, right, if you believe that there is an idea or a problem that you feel strongly about that you want to solve, just go ahead and try it out. Like, what is the worst that can happen? And that is what I kept telling myself when I started. Like, what is really the worst that can happen? Like, worst cases, I will fail, but even the job I will get after that will hopefully pay me better because now I have more experiences. And obviously the upside to this is unlimited. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think big takeaway being believe in yourself and then give it a shot and then go for it. And any tips on fundraising? And that too in a market like this today, where I don't think there are too many checks that are being written. And both of you have gone through the journey, both angel funding and then later institutional funding. And grateful that you both chose Chiratae as a investor in the first institutional rounds. But it's good to see that. But any tips that you would recommend, what an entrepreneur should look for in the investor?
Yeah, I think today, at least from our personal experience, discussing with various institutional investors in the last couple of months, there is a little bit of a focus shift towards more sustainability than growth potential. Like, for example, if some company could have invested millions of dollars for a few years in order to start becoming positive, EBITDA positive, I think there is a little bit of a mindset shift over there. And at least we believe that will sort of make sure that products or companies which are really solving some valuable problems, those would fare well in this market. Because when you have revenue right from your first year or right from your first 6 months, somebody is paying for what you are building. That shows that there is some conviction in what you are selling. So for any entrepreneurs who are looking to raise funds, just make sure that there are customers who are willing to pay you before you look for investors who are willing to pay you. Because the customer revenue is something that will actually grow the company a lot more in terms of value. And the investor money would be there to support your growth. But finally, it is the revenue that will create value in your company.
Yeah, from our side and from our experience, so it was a little different, TCM, because we went ahead and raised completely for a new product that we were building from scratch. So in a way, it was not a follow-on round. But honestly, like, this did not bother me as much that the market was bad and lesser checks were written, because I always felt like, that also means that only the companies that are actually solving real problems would be funded, and that means there will be lesser noise. Like, I remember 2 years back or about 1 year back, it was like every other day some or the other company was getting funded, right? And it was very hard to really know which of those companies were solving real problems and have real customers and real revenue coming in. So I think even though there are lesser checks that are being written, I think the principles for fundraising hold true. And just like Vrushali also mentioned, right, you got to solve like a big problem. You have to go for a problem which has a large TAM. You have to have customers who love you. And I feel as long as all of that is true, I don't see why you will not get funded if you're ready for the next stage of your funding, right? I feel you will still find people who believe in your vision. The second question that you asked on what to look for investors, I think one of the things that we look for, which is really important for us in both our rounds that we did, institutional rounds, is like, do they really understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve, right? Through the process of sort of, interacting with us, like how deep are they going into the problem, and how deeply did they understand the customer. That also helps us understand, because at the end of the day, investor is not from your industry, and when they decide to invest, it's a completely new thing that they have to take on in learning about you, your company, your market. So that was very important. And the other is, of course, just the general experience of working with them, because once you take on an investor, it's like a relationship for a long time, if not life, I would say. So you, at the end of the day, you should be really, really comfortable with interacting with them, with speaking your mind, because, they are ultimately there for days when, things are not going good. And on that days is when you have to go and tell them that, hey, this is something that we tried and it's not working out. I think those would be the two things that I would look for. Maybe Vrushali, you can add if there is something else.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I agree with that point, definitely. Like Chiratae, as well as the other investors that we have on our board, they have been very open and very accepting towards everything that all the decisions that we take, some really bold in terms of changing the product experience, deciding on going after a specific market, not going after a specific market. So in that sense, I think I agree 200% that having a better alignment with the investors that are coming in, it just helps in making sure that your growth journey is very seamless and frictionless.
So obviously, being an entrepreneur is a very stressful thing. It's 25/8, as I call it, right? 25 hours a day and 8 days a week, right? So, what are your, tricks to recharge yourself, to find your calm, right? And that is very important for all of us. And where do you get that from, right? And also, sometimes you need to continue to be calm even when there's a huge turmoil going in your mind. So how do you manage that? Because you can't show all of that to your team and others, right?
I think in my case, a sense of purpose or a milestone helps me drive towards something. For example, there was time when we were in office like 16 hours a day, 14 hours a day. And at that time, it used to get obviously challenging mentally. But then when you feel that you have a finish line, maybe 1 month from now, you work towards it, you get some level of gratification of whatever effort you put in, you got some results out of it. Then you take a little bit of breather and then you move on again. So I think in that case, depending on the phase of your journey, that gratification can come from work factors or from personal factors or a combination of both. But just having a sense of purpose, how much ever small it may be, that can just keep you pushing. Like even if you have a large goal or a large dream, you can just break it into like 15 milestones, 20 milestones, 30 milestones, and you only work towards that little milestone for that 1 month or 3 months. And that sort of helps you to push quite a lot. And to answer the second question, in terms of what do you do in times of turmoil, at least in my case, when it is work related, we have been lucky that the 3 co-founders and the core team that we have built, because all of us have been together right since the first version of the product. So it's been 8 years of a lot of ups and downs that we have seen together. So we just sit down in a room and have honest conversations that, this is not working out. And then for maybe some 15, 30 minutes, everybody lashes out. Then everybody gets exhausted. And then you start to think what to do next. So just having that sounding board that you can trust. Like when you have a large team, you cannot just go out and tell everybody that, you are facing a challenge, but you don't know how it is going to pan out. But if you have nobody in the team, then that becomes very challenging. So at least for us, we were lucky to have that core team of 5-6 members with whom we can just share our honest, deepest, darkest thoughts about whatever is going on. So that actually helps. And it is very necessary for founders to at least have the co-founders. And if not, and if you have more, then that is a cherry on the cake. So, yeah.
But Vrushali, I have a follow-up question for you here, right? So, like, you, as you mentioned, you, let's say, share with your core team and your co-founders, right? But like, let's say generally there's something going on and you might be stressed or anxious or whatever, right? So how, is there anything else that you do apart from like, discussing with your core team on your own, or anything else in the personal front as well?
On personal front, I try to shut down. Like, for example, if I feel that there is one part of life which is really challenging, I just try to shut it down for a couple of hours. Like, I am into sports, so I go for a swim, I go for a run. I just talk to my mother for an hour and a half. And you like just a clean break from whatever has been challenging. And then it goes both ways. Like, if I'm feeling really stressed on family front, I just keep maybe 2-3 weeks of no family talk and I put myself into work. If there is something on sports front, I put myself a lot into work. So wherever I feel there is a lot of stress, I just try to take a little bit of a break, and then that gives fresh perspective. Like when you sleep after a tough day, just sleeping for 8 hours also gives you the much needed rejuvenation.
So relatable. I think that was going to be my advice, CCM, that
Sleep.
make sure you're eating well and sleeping well, and if possible, exercising. I think just doing these three really help a lot. But I think she's very right. Like my answer would be very similar. Like just having like a close community of people that you can rely on and depend on in situations like these, whether it's at work or personally. Like I also, like I'm friends with a couple of other women founders, and once in a while we'll get together and we'll talk about things that even my co-founder Rishabh sometimes does not get. This point that I mentioned about women feeling a little bit more, thinking more than usual. Than I'm generalizing a little bit, but it's just a trend I've seen. And when we get down together, we'll talk about all of that. So just having people that you can relate with, and whether it's your friends, family, your community, and of course, ultimately, no one will understand your struggle and your pain better than your co-founder. So it's very important to have that kind of a relationship where you can like talk your heart out anytime you're going through a time like that. So that of course helps. And I think one more thing that helps me is just taking some alone time. Vrushali mentioned she goes for sports. So for me, it could be similar. Like I'll go for a walk, I'll go to gym, or just, like block everything out and just maybe listen to music or things like that. Right. So just doing something where I think you're able to block out things is, I think it's important, and it really helps.
Yeah, most of the time I find solutions during my runs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very meditative, actually.
True. Yeah. Definitely.
And last question for both of you in terms of, is there an inspiration for you, somebody whom you have seen, who inspires you, whom you want to be like?
I think in my case, it is a little more emotional than tactical. Like I have seen my mother and my grandmothers go through a lot of struggle, and they have been they ran the show themselves. Like both of my grandmothers, they have sort of single, like my grandmother raised my mother as a single mother. My mom's fought for me whenever she felt that it was the right thing to do. And even today, she continues to do that. And I have given them a lot of trouble throughout my childhood and college life, through a lot of different things that I did. So I think for me, emotionally, I think the primary thing is just to make sure that whatever I do, they are proud of what I am doing.
So for me, I feel TCM, because this journey is so long and on most parts lonely in some ways as well, right? I think I try to find wherever I can to get inspired. Like I'll try to get, like for example, with just this conversation itself, I feel so inspired from Vrushali, right? So it's I just feel like there is, you can never run short of inspiration, because you'll need it, almost like you need it to constantly fuel you on days where it sometimes is hard to get up from your bed, right? So yeah, I think on some days it's having a conversation with my mom. On some days it's something that my woman co-founder friend would tell me that she faced, and this is how she overcame. I think for me, it's just not one thing, one constant thing, but I think I try to find inspiration in everyday life wherever I can, because I just feel like it ultimately just helps me better. Yeah. Like I'll try to read stories of people who made it, how they made it, what moved them. And yeah, so things like that, basically.
Yeah. Thank you, Vrushali. Thank you, Aditi, for taking time, sharing your journey, sharing your experiences very generously. And you also been generous on time. And thank you.